Well, percenters, welcome back to 1424 basketball training, where the goal is to take 14 minutes, 24 seconds, or 1% of your day to get better. In today's episode, Greatest Peaks, Hakeem Olajuwon, episode 8. Let's watch the dream.
People view Hakeem Olajuwon's 2 championships in the middle of the 90s as a kind of interim title belt on rent while Michael Jordan swung away at curveballs. But maybe Hakeem should have been in the best player conversation before Jordan retired. Maybe his dazzling scoring repertoire unlocked something special in the playoffs. And maybe that incredible defense made him one of the very best players of the three-quarter era.
I mean, in this day and time, literally you can control what you can only control. Michael Jordan retires for 2 years and the dream and the Rockets win. Can you really control that? No. So it shouldn't be used against him.
Multi-year stretches, examining the legends who provided them.
The dream.
Soccer, volleyball, field hockey, high jump, more of an all-around athlete. But the coach was telling me that basketball is a game.
Hakeem's defensive highlights have the grandiosity of some NFL films montage. No one in NBA history recorded more block shots than Hakeem Olajuwon. Even though he was closer to 6'10" than a true 7 feet, his incredible combination of athleticism and timing made him feel like a...
I think Hakeem was probably the most agile and fluid center.
Very tall Oliver Kahn on the basketball court. This sequence epitomizes how impregnable he could be. And Otis Thorpe has no chance against the explosive Pippen. But when Chicago runs this with Hakeem as the low man, Olajuwon spits the dunk back in Scotty's face, and Pippen has a runway and is above the square, and he still goes and gets it. It's not any easier trying to glide around Hakeem because that long right hockey stick finds the basketball as he twists in the air. The first cornerstone of was his accuracy targeting the ball with that domineering right hand. Notice the hand tracks with the path of the ball as it's shot. Even in his younger days, when he was slightly less polished, he was incredibly accurate targeting the rock. Growing up as a handball player.
Growing up as a handball player, just watching the variety of his jumps off of 2, off of 1, makes your fluidity much more apparent.
Primed him to zero in on the ball like this. Hakeem didn't play basketball in Nigeria until he was about 16, so it was really volleyball that groomed his jumping technique. He patiently.
Ooh, volleyball, handball, soccer.
Prepared to.
When I talk about training kids, even when parents come to me, I get messages all the time, requests to train their kids as early as 5. I have kids that are 6. Mind, body, craft, and then we have generalized training, and then you have specific training. In some other videos, when I talk about if you want to get really good at just shooting, you can work on free throws. That's very specific. But every other shot in the game is general, and they all may look the same, but the more generalized your training early on, the better I believe you'll be. You don't want to specialize way too early because you lose a lot of movements that you would learn in other sports. So when I talk about how the game is more like football, soccer, all these different varieties of sports and movements, it develops like this robustness in your ability to move. When I talk about how movement matters, and your ability to move is probably the most important thing as the game speeds up more and more. But in this world, even in the business that I'm in training, everybody wants to drill a million, dribble moves and shot types and stuff like that. Whereas with my young kids, it's very, very general. It's general movement, ladder, agility, playing tag, dodgeball. Even though it's basketball training, I explain it to the parents that way.
To spring up and wait till the precise moment to commit to a shot. He holds until Sean Elliott's airborne, then spikes this thing. This is subtle and requires great reflexes, but when Olajuwon moved around the paint, he was constantly ready to jump, which allowed him to attack after a shooter left his feet. It's on display here, where he slides over to contest, but when Elliott hesitates, Hakeem shuffles his feet into a new jumping position and sends it back in his face. Yes, in the face! This feet into a new jumping position on display.
So look at this. This, either you have to train like crazy in the gym or you get it through the variety of different other sports. So the ability to hold on a leg a little bit longer for a split second longer, millisecond longer, it really comes from volleyball because certain sets are super high and you might approach a little early. And if you ever played volleyball, you might approach the ball a little bit early. And then you have to delay when your other foot hits. So your explode foot, you have to load a little bit longer and then wait for the explode. So the timing and his different jumps and his different jump types, the elastic, the stiffness off of one leg and the load explode
jump, which allowed him to
shows up a lot
after
on
he shooted off his
defense.
feet. It's on display here, where he slides over to contest, but when Elliott hesitates, Hakeem shovels his feet into a new jumping position and sends it back in his face. This is an incredible skill, allowing him to slide into position for a save, yet he doesn't jump, instead controlling his body. And
that looks like a 1-2 plant for a volleyball. Nope, he doesn't get it. Resets. This is an elastic hop here.
He probably learned some of this playing his third major sport growing up, soccer, where mainly he played goalkeeper, foreshadowing his career as the NBA's all-time leader in blocks. Hakeem registered at least 5 blocks in 35% of his playoff games from 1986 to 1994.
Very rarely do you see, we just saw the last one on David Robinson. Hakeem can easily get into his hips. Go find me a clip where David Robinson is this low and this bent into his hip angle.
35% of his playoff games from 1986 to 1994, and in those last 2 years, had 5 in nearly half of his postseason contests. When he was younger, he was more of an athletic force, but still fairly raw since he picked up basketball at such a late age. And by 1990, his defensive techniques were more polished, and he still had that whirlwind athleticism. But his 1993 season blended some sage tricks with his incredible body control that was so rare in someone his size. For example, Hakeem learns to lurk closer to the ball than most big men of the illegal defense era. You see Joe Klein point here because Olajuwon should be above the foul line, but Dream was so quick to the ball, he was rarely called for these violations. With David Robinson at the top of the key, Hakeem loads to the ball at the edge of the legal boundary, the bottom of a little circle, so his quick reaction time can erase a layup. This subtle positioning was especially valuable on the weak side. He's not glued to Robinson and was always tracking the ball, ready to materialize at the rim. Poor Sean Elliott. Olajuwon's quick help was a nightmare for opponents who were reluctant to shoot when he went into fly swatting mode with that right hand. He trapped threats well and was so quick to come into the lane and
so disciplined.
Olajuwon's quick help was a nightmare for opponents who were reluctant to
like
shoot.
Right here, he steps up. Nope, Barkley. I'm not jumping. I know you're trying to pump fake me. Here comes again, reads the pass from KJ, and then jumps.
Threats well and was so quick to come into the lane and suffocate any attempt around the basket. When Hakeem went to the bench, opposing teams could finally breathe. All of a sudden, those high percentage shots around the hoop felt much easier. Back in the game, he swarms to the ball, even with his man up high, and that response speed generated more high leverage contests than any contemporary that I've tracked.
Brains and agility.
He pounces on this back cut, but it's a touch too late. And every once in a while, he missed a cutter coming through the lane. But he was usually...
This is just, he didn't miss him. He just mistimed it. Avery Johnson lets it up early.
And every once in a while, he missed a cutter coming through the lane.
So he's there. He just doesn't think that Avery Johnson is going to go with the left hand on the inside reverse. Normally that would be like a right hand hook.
But he was usually quick to rotate, plugging up gaps in the back line. Although by 1995, he was a bit slower, sometimes arriving late on these save attempts from outside the paint, and a slightly...
And again, so arriving late. So when I talk about like how offense controls defense, nowadays, if Hakeem had seen this type of shot here, okay, this is a quick right hand layup.
Save attempts from outside the paint.
Right hand off of the right foot on the inside. So typically this is the wrong, back then, this is the wrong type of shot. So he doesn't understand that timing. So yes, he's late, but it doesn't take away that, you know, any of the other stuff that he blocked. If he's seen enough of these images, then he would block it.
And a slightly slower motor meant he wasn't itching to jump at everything on command.
So that talks about like the diversity in finishing. If you guys, from the offensive perspective, you have to have a variety of different finish types off a different foot, different timing, and all of that stuff. And again, it goes back to the generalized training that I talk about. You have to be very robust, even though everybody's trying to go specialized. It just takes a lot more time and consistency and volume to get all of these generalized moves. Like I can do all these moves, but it's taken me forever to develop all these. The peak of most people's basketball career is 18 when you're a senior. And I have to explain this to parents. When they give me their kid at 5 and 6, I clearly ask them, like, what's your goal with this kid? Do you want them to have fun? Are you really trying to get them involved or what? Usually around 10 is when they start figuring out like, oh, okay, we're going to take this more seriously and we're going to dump other sports. But if they're trying to specialize way too early, you know, it's going to be kind of a bad thing in my eyes. And if you're trying to come into this at like 14 when you're a freshman, it's going to be way too late, and you're not going to have the variety, and you're just going to try to specialize here. And the best I could do for you is turn you into a really, really good spot shooter, but you won't have seen enough throughout the game to play defense, react, and all these different kinds of situations that other kids who start playing AAU at literally 5-6 years old, they're in games, every weekend for basically 10 to 13 years.
Helped him defend the perimeter too. For one, he was rarely ever attacked by wings on switches. They also didn't run as many pick and rolls in the 90s as they do today, and coverages weren't as developed then, yet he was still comfortable stepping out and taking on smaller players in these spots without too much of a price to pay. On this 1993 play,
that's Avery Johnson, widely kind of known as not a really good shooter. So I could double team Rodman. Who cares about this jump shot? Risk management.
Play, Hakeem realizes there's too much space between him and the ball, so he closes it quickly, then sort of lingers near the lane so he can blow up another shot attempt. Here he blitzes the ball handler to completely blow up the play, although maybe he's too overzealous hounding the dribbler into the backcourt. Still, this fantastic mobility.
This is crazy. That's John Starks. I think he was an all-star, but he was pretty good shooting guard. Center guarding all the way out here, way beyond the half-court line, disrupting everything. Is this the finals?
The dribbler into the backcourt. Still, this fantastic mobility allowed him to erase weaknesses in these outdated ball screen coverages. He's really low and lunges at the ball from this.
This is what I talk about, like brains. When you play defense, you have to make the offensive player think. So you just stunt or threaten or skirmish, kind of stunt, scare this guy, make him think about what you're going to do. Back, jab forward, jab back. Show him something, see what he can do. Maybe you'll get him to pass it early or react early, and then you can make a move. Players don't get this nowadays. They just kind of wait here and look.
Ouch. Then somehow slides back to contest. He's hugged up to Shaq on this pick.
So if you lunge forward like this, okay, this is great. So he lunges forward. So this takes away that jumper. Typically, if you're lunging forward, the offensive player is going to try to beat you. But if Olajuwon knew to lunge forward only to come back where he wants to be to protect the rim, that's brilliant. You have to only, I can only guess what he's actually thinking of doing here.
Wow.
But you get all up in his space. Now he can't shoot that jumper.
Then somehow slides back to contest. He's hugged up to Shaq on this pick and roll, but that fluid footwork shifts him into position so he can seamlessly transition from sliding to jumping, and preternatural timing stamps the layup. The culmination of Olajuwon's from sliding to jump. This is also really good. That's Anthony Hardaway. That's Shaq. But you got to give some credit here. This is the design of the defense, I'm assuming. Kenny Smith. Preternatural. Okay, this guy's coming for the baseline help. So Penny has to wait for this guy to clear. So he has to wait for Marielli to clear. He's trying to go up with two hands, and then it forces him the culmination to try to go right there. Timing, soccer agility, and handball accuracy led to the most important block of his career. This John Stark shot is for the title in 1994. Hakeem slams on the brakes, then somehow recovers backwards and times this leap off the wrong foot to save the season. This matrix recovery looks half impossible, but he does somehow block it to force a seventh game that Houston would go on to win in large part because of Olajuwon's offense, which may have been even more gravity bending. I don't even remember this shot ever. This is pretty amazing. Almost off balance, regains it and just lunges.
I know one time I gave him a ball and he just laughed. nice, elbow better. And then he came down and gave me
And by Shaq means the dream shake, Hakeem's twirling array of head fakes and spins that set up so many of his moves. His blend of size and ballet footwork made him a deadly. That's a move everybody is taught nowadays, or at least I do. These were skills he possessed early in his career, drilling crazy fadeaway jumpers or faking one way to freeze defenders and then spinning for a jump hook. That agility and balance gave him an edge over most bigs of that time. But selection was an issue in those early days. Jiu-jitsu teams at times, and in other cases, just so this is back in the day when centers were the main position that you want. So you get a lot more practice battling, or when I say wrestling and jiu-jitsu off of centers. Nowadays, there's nobody that wants to battle down there. So the post is more lost art than mid-range because there's a lot more trainers that are guards. Very, very few trainers that are, centers that can show you post moves, when to push, when he's pushing you here, how to shove an elbow here, how to get his arm off you, how to spin and hook his arm, how to drop step, how to position your foot, how to booty bounce him. Just so many like little things inside of the game that happen, on every little post battle. It's like I guess offensive tackle and defensive tackle. Literally, you might not notice
what's going on in every snap, but they're fighting and they're gauging each other literally every play. Like, okay, leverage. He leans my shoulder. I'm going to push this way. He has a bad ankle. I'm going to spin this way. There's so many tiny little things that go on in there.
Firing deep jumpers early in the shot clock. By 1993, Hakeem's scoring game was more cases just firing.
Look at this forward. This is beautiful, right? Rip, cross step, pound. Okay, seal with this other foot. This foot comes on this other side. So here's a perfect example. He gets his foot outside of this guy's foot. So now he's locked. If he puts that elbow where I talk about a lot, if you pick the ball up with two hands, okay, and you slam him with your elbow here right into his ribs, or lock his shoulder, lock whoever's who is that, MJ? Lock his shoulder. Okay, lock his shoulder. When you spin and you hit him with your elbow and his arm is down, you lock this guy's arm from lifting up to contest you. Even if his arm is up here, okay, I can't tell from this picture, but if his arm is up here, when you give him this shot into this rib, okay, you're strong enough without even, or I'm strong enough, these guys are plenty strong enough to shove them with his elbow right here and help this spin happen. There's so many little things going on in there. And so the foot sealing, the elbow, and then the balance, and then the recognition to make the shot there. So he's not, oh, that's Horace Grant. So he has no chance.
By 1993, Hakeem's scoring game was more
like, has nothing to do whether or not he makes a shot. It's like, can you get the shot?
Deep jumper early in the
boom, beautiful footwork.
By 1993, Hakeem's scoring game was more polished and under control, carving out shots like some sort of basketball ballerina. All of his moves flowed together, which made
again here, okay, spin and jumping off a one. So you have to have the balance to spin and then regain. So you have to have tons of strength to push off the right leg, balance on one leg, and jump. Okay, you have the ability to put down the other right foot, but in this case, there's not enough time to shoot it.
Basketball ballerina. All of his moves flowed together, which made them so difficult to slow down. A spin one way, then back the other, throw an up fake, and then a hook. From there, he could fake the hook to set up his fadeaway to the opposite shoulder. And at around 250 pounds, he was able to pivot with power and find clean shots in traffic. Even double teams couldn't always stop his fadeaway because he could twist and contort into the shot comfortably. And Dream could also face off from the perimeter and wheel his way into those. Michael Jordan once called him 7-foot guard because Hakeem's handle was secure enough to drive into open space. And that quickness was a challenge for most opponents who worked really hard just to keep up, only to be juked right into highlightville. After all of that, Big Ben still had to worry about his spin. Oh, that is so nasty.
So this is when I talk about Joker. When the guy bumps you, use it as leverage. So here he's trying to Olajuwon's trying to, Ewing's trying to butt ram him, lift him up. And so Olajuwon just bounces off and uses it gently. And then he just uses it to lift and spin around.
His spin, oh, that is so nasty. Hakeem's array of pirouettes and dizzying pump fakes crescendo in the 1995 Western Finals against David Robinson, who was often left on an island to defend him, inviting Hakeem to shoot into that single coverage. This series wasn't actually that different from Olajuwon's normal scoring these years. There were a number of those savage fadeaways, some of which were still really difficult and didn't always go in, along with an assortment of drives, up fakes, spins, and hook shots. A lack of double teams made life easier for Hakeem, who obviously welcomed the chance to dance with Robinson in an isolation game. Olajuwon is one of the few players who improved his scoring numbers in the playoffs. And from 1993 to 95, he was
just watching this in like succession, all the little highlights. Olajuwon's like the best center.
Was just behind the all-time scoring juggernauts in volume while scoring on positive efficiency.
Or at least most skilled. At least most skilled.
Score, he compares favorably to other contemporary big men. However, the brilliance of Hakeem's shot making was a double-edged sword. These moves were difficult for defenses to take away without hard double teams, but they also were hard shots to make. Most players manufacture easy points against weak defenses, but are forced into harder, low percentage shots against elite ones. But Hakeem's attempts were already difficult in the first place. He just made a bunch of them. And since he could generate these shots almost on demand, stronger defenses couldn't really take away his scoring because he was already taking those hard shots. This kind of resilient or inelastic scoring meant Olajuwon's numbers weren't dented that much when he faced different defenses. Compared to other players in this series, Olajuwon shows some of the smallest change among volume scorers when facing high-end defensive teams versus facing weak defensive teams. One way to limit Hakeem's scoring was by sending effective help that forced him into a pass. He was dangerous enough that defenses frequently doubled him, and that created plenty of outside shots for teammates. But Olajuwon was not a natural passer.
That's how they won 2 championships.
He shifted into a scoring move, which is why he jacked up so many wild shots when he was younger. In 1993,
personality profiles, right? Scorer, sniper, slasher. defender, playmaker. He sounds like a scorer.
He said he finally.
So when he finally figures it out, he's a scorer on the other end, right? Playmaker on one end, scorer on the other end. If Hakeem started here, like jacking, especially as a young kid, when he moves more towards the playmaker side, this is usually when they thrive. Kobe, MJ, who else is over here? LeBron's on this side. LeBron playmaker. When does LeBron start winning? When he starts jacking up more shots and stops carrying. Yeah, another example.
The league grew comfortable trusting his teammates to knock down their open shots, and Coach Rudy Tomjanovich implemented a more Olajuwon-centric offense with shooters around Hakeem in a kind of spoken wheel model. He was more patient in spots, allowing the defense to commit to a double team before making a decision.
So easy.
Substantially helped his playmaking during these years by punishing defenses with some basic passing.
This is all Joker needs, man.
Instead of his own scoring. His balance and body control allowed him to flow from his scoring dance steps into passes if he felt too much pressure.
Robert Horry.
Robinson in the last episode, who could get locked up by hard doubles. Hakeem, on the other hand, easily segued from a dream shake to a pass.
If you have great footwork, you can use that footwork to find passing angles, passing shots. I mean, passing angles or your own shot. So
this helped replace some difficult shots with passes. He misses a teammate in close, but at least finds the open shooter. And here he feels the double, misses a more advanced interior pass, but close. But
in this case, that's not even if he passes it to number 7, that's not a good pass because the rotation would be way too easy. So that's the right passes to Robert Horry.
Finds the open shooter. And here he feels the double, misses a more advanced interior pass, but still calmly kicks it to a teammate. Now, even in those years, Olajuwon still took his fair share of double team shots where he left shooters stranded. His instinct to just catch and immediately look to score was still strong even at his peak. But I think a bigger weakness was a lack of vision. This looks like it's in his periphery, but he misses it, and he rarely ever hit these kinds of passes. It's still there when he shoots.
These are not there.
But he misses it, and he rarely ever hit.
These are not there. This pass is not there. Like that's not that ball is going to get deflected. The only way he gets this pass here is with a over the shoulder hook type of pass, but that's very likely to get deflected, or if he's quick enough to like behind the back or maybe even between his legs or between this guy's legs, like a traditional type of pass, this is not available. You got to be really, really creative to get that pass through there. That's a 100% deflection.
Vision. This looks like it's in his periphery.
Like that window is like ridiculously tight, and what is this guy going to do with it anyway?
But he misses it, and he rarely ever hit these.
Same thing here. These things, this pass is not there. Like it's a ball moving type pass, but it's not going to lead to any scoring. You cannot pass it through this window. There's a dude here. He's way too close. And even if he does, he's going to get it. The easiest thing to do is one dribble here and then turn around, fade away, or one dribble up and then drop and score on the baseline. Whereas if you went up here, one dribble up, spin baseline, this guy's going to drop to the bottom, and then this guy should shoot to the corner, and that's a much easier pass to a longer closeout, and then that should be a wide open 3.
The passes, it's still there when he shoots. Some of this was a byproduct of playing with his back to the basket and not turning and surveying the court. But Olajuwon wasn't someone who mapped the floor or kept an eye on advantages like this.
Like this is not his pass. That should have been his pass. That should have been an alley-oop to Robert Horry.
And surveying the court. But Olajuwon wasn't someone who mapped the floor or kept.
Like right here, Clyde Drexler's just staring at Olajuwon right here, right? As soon as he sees this movement, this should have been a flip from here to a lob to Robert Horry. This has no
like this. His primary.
Like he's already open, so the window's already gone. The time's already gone.
Was reading the double team, and here he spins away from it and loses track of where his teammates are. To be fair, he could hit passes if he felt an extra defender on a drive, and he certainly had the athletic dexterity to drop dimes in those situations. Still, more of his passing was out of the post, and there was
This is literally, I mean, this is awesome. I like these because this is literally how I talk to my team when we watch game film and stuff like that. So
results from there were certainly mixed.
Obviously, based off of their ability.
Maximizing Hakeem's playmaking really required shooters who were spaced around the three-point arc, and this likely raised his offensive value in 1995 when the NBA shortened the three-point line. Higher percentage shooters.
Scorers will only pass to people who convert because their mentality is, I can do it by myself. So they're always doing some calculation shit. Is your three-pointer worth more than, your percentage shot versus my percentage shot?
Shooters amplified Hakeem's playmaking by charging more for those double teams in the post. In 1995, the Rockets set a new NBA record for threes in a season, making nearly
like Kenny Smith would be like literally nothing. All of those guys that played off of Hakeem and just space and shot threes, they'd be nobodies without Hakeem.
8 per game at 37%. Then in the playoffs, they were closer to 9 threes per game at a hefty 39%.
9 is like a quarter nowadays.
The record they broke was held by the 1994 Rockets, who made 5 a game in the regular season and then nearly 7 at 36% in the playoffs. And you'll never guess who held the playoff record before that, the 1993 Rockets. They made 5 per game at 37%. Some of those playoff percentages might be boosted by hot shooting, but playing inside out was clearly the viable way to construct an offense around Olajuwon. And the results were pretty good, but not great. The shortened line in 1995 made this a more attainable strategy, basically doubling the number of legit 35% three-point shooters in the league overnight.
It's amazing what a stupid line can do for you. So, I mean, when I got my own gym, I'm really thinking about having, if I have 2 courts, 1 court. I don't want this line here because this line just, I don't know, subconsciously, consciously makes you shoot from it. In smaller gyms, when I train in smaller gyms, when there's a line, it's the regular NBA high school line, right? Players are going to shoot at this line. If you train at a bigger gym and you have the college line, which is a little further, players are going to shoot from this one. If you have the NBA line, which is even farther, players are going to shoot at this one because they want to see which line they can shoot at. So, I mean, if I just drew a court with a bunch of lines, players would shoot at different lines. Inevitably, there's no lines between 3-pointer and half court. And what do the kids do on water breaks? They chuck it from half court, and they go from half court. And then once they can start hitting half court, they go all the way to the other side and shoot from the other line. So if you want to become a really, really deadly shooter, you have to figure out these distances with your own friggin' brain without actual line. And once you kind of separate yourself from the line, you can shoot further. So the spacing is not dependent on the line. It's dependent on your ability to shoot. Like, how far is your shot? So I always say, like, your horizontal is more important than your vertical. It's very hard to describe this to young kids. Your horizontal is like, how far can you shoot? How much of a threat are you out here? Like, most kids can barely shoot a free throw. Are you a threat at the 3-point line? That's why most defenses, they pick up at the 3-point line. If you can hit a 3, they'll start guarding you outside the 3. So if you can shoot NBA range, you're going to be much better for me in my purposes. Most kids can barely even jump to touch the rim. So that's 10 feet. What good does it do for me if you can jump 10 feet and do that? Can you go to 12, 11, 12 like NBA players? So I talk about, like, your potential or your ceiling is your horizontal times your vertical, right? That's your I don't know, your effectiveness or your ceiling. So your horizontal times your vertical. So if you could shoot out to 30 times, you can touch the backboard at 10. Your thing is, I'm bad at math, right? 300 versus Steph Curry, who's 40, right? His is out to 400. That's how much space you got to guard this dude. Anyway, all right. Back to the dream.
But Houston's offense wasn't great because of Hakeem's passing limitations. He didn't look for extra passes like this naturally, and so it's unclear how he would fit next to another offensive star. The other tools were there to fit next to a playmaking perimeter weapon. First, he was a really solid mid-range shooter, and that allowed him to play the pick-and-pop game effectively. Dream was nimble enough to move into some of these shots, and the data we have on his long twos near the end of his career suggests he was fairly efficient from the outside. He wasn't as big and explosive as someone like Robinson, either as a lob threat or headed downhill, but his agility made him a strong finisher, and this meant he was always a scoring threat as a roll man, using his gracefulness to carve out finishes near the rim. Furthermore, Hakeem was also a fantastic offensive rebounder. Some of this is related to his shot blocking, where he could move and jump in one motion. The other part is that he just constantly pursued the ball on misses. And all those jukes and shakes, along with his physical strength, made him a pain to keep off the offensive glass. He was particularly dangerous sneaking in from the perimeter, swimming past 2 players here to steal Shaq's board. So the building blocks were certainly there.
Like, where do you learn these skills in basketball? Like, think about training a team, right? Do you train kids to, hey, let me throw it off the backboard and let me just have you jump 1,000 times and tip dunk this? Are you training 1,000 alley-oops? No, this is learned from, like, volleyball, 1,000 jumps in volleyball. You're timing the ball, when you can jump, when you can peek, and then you're just grabbing it and putting it in the rim.
Some of this is related to his shot blocking, where he could move and jump in one motion. The other part is that he just constantly
where is this?
On misses.
Like, how do you learn to be elusive like this? do you do a million rebounding drills?
And all those jukes and shakes.
And here, when you're teaching somebody to be handsy, when I teach somebody to be handsy and rebounding, like you learn this stuff when you're a wide receiver playing a DB or offensive tackle and defensive tackle. But in basketball, if at training you're just doing dribbling and shooting, when do you learn how to, fight like this for a rebound?
Strength made him a
here. Okay, this is a swim move. Boom, get over, get your arm over.
Keep off the offensive glass. He was
does it again over here.
Particularly dangerous sneaking in from the perimeter, swimming past 2 players here to steal Shaq's board. So the building blocks were certainly there for Olajuwon to play a fairly effective off-ball role. It's just a question of how many post touches and hero ball shots he was willing to forego. His defensive prowess alone makes him interesting to build around because in theory he guarantees his team a passable defense, and with the right pieces he can anchor an elite one. Before Hakeem's defense started, he guaranteed
some bum trying to post him up right here and he spins. He's like, dude, you expose the ball. So when I talk about offensive, great offensive players know where you should and shouldn't put the ball. If you apply it on defense, you can be very, very good defensively. So here, stupid little spin. Okay, footwork is terrible. He doesn't get around. His feet aren't wide enough to get around Olajuwon's feet, so the ball is going to be exposed. So it's real easy for him to poke it out.
Defense, and with the right pieces, he can anchor an elite one. Before Hakeem's defense started to slide in 1995, those first 2 Tomjanovich teams held opponents about 4 points below their regular season efficiency in the playoffs. That's around the 70th percentile historically, which is impressive for not fielding a defensively slanted team like Detroit's Bad Boys or the Twin Towers Spurs. Some of his impact stemmed from Hakeem's man-to-man defense. His shot blocking instincts made shooting around him tricky, while his agile feet kept quicker big men in front of him.
Yep.
His balance and timing gave post players a ton of trouble, which stood out in the 1994
2 quick jumps there.
Ewing struggled to find any clean shots when isolated against
Ewing was super heavy on his feet, more of a strength player.
And ended up posting an unheard of 39% true shooting in that 7-game series.
Forces him to take a tough shot here.
An unheard of 39% true shooting in that 7-game series. Hakeem had incredible hands too, probably from the handball. And one of his defensive tricks when guarding the post was to time up a quick push flick once his man started dribbling. Sometimes just getting the ball to the post was a chore against him because he gobbled entry passes better than just about any center ever.
This is all timing, right? So when a guy dribbles into you, you understand when the ball is going to be the closest to you. So you put your arm up here. I don't know if they'll let you play like this nowadays, right? This is an arm or a hand check, right? Maybe in the post they'll let you. But as soon as this collision comes, the ball is getting closer to you. So that's when you would go for a reach. You wouldn't go for a reach right here, right now. And again, brains.
When guarding the post.
So when he comes in, the ball gets closer. That's when you time your reach.
Quick push flick once his man started dribbling. Sometimes just getting the ball.
Same thing here. It looks like you're not playing defense. Let a little lazy entry come in. This guy thinks that you're just going to get an easy catch post entry. Okay. One side, other side, back to this side, reach over the top. Okay. Don't let this guy post you up. So Olajuwon does the work before the ball gets there. Again, here, he's keeping him out the paint. Okay. Now he's close. This guy's just being heavy on his feet. Okay. Pushing him around. Now he's just going to go to the other side.
Just about any center.
You can see like he falls over because he's off balance on his push.
Getting the ball to.
So right here, this guy's lazy.
Post was a chore against him because he gobbled entry.
Right here, he's just trying to brute strength and grab him. Okay, so when somebody's trying to grab you, don't fight force with force. Be elusive, be fluid, go around.
Without any center ever. He was constantly repositioning himself into a slight overplay to take away the
here
passing angle.
Okay, so ball pressure, one side, other side. Now you can go around.
In a bait and switch. All of his handsiness.
So if you take forever to get into this post entry, they get nervous. These guys get tired. If you put more ball pressure, it's so much harder to get a pass in there.
Produced historically great steal.
Again, Bill Cartwright, you're a loser, dude.
Among side in a bait and switch. All of his hand.
Here again, okay, let you catch it. Okay, you're way too low. You're gonna go up again. You don't even replace your feet to make a move.
Historically great steal rates. Among big men, he posted 8 of the top 100 seasons in steals per possession.
Come on.
Highest on record in 1989. Hakeem also borrowed a little Bill Russell move where he kept his left hand low to target passes when he left his feet. Back in episode 2, we saw Bill Walton limit other All-Star centers as scorers, but Hakeem was even more impressive against All-Stars at his defensive peak. He held them over 5 percentage points below their normal true shooting while denting their volume. Numbers matched by only a few of the other defensive giants. Since we have plus-minus data going back to 1994, we can get an idea of how valuable all this defense was. Since we have plus-minus data going back to 1994, we can get an idea of how valuable all this defense was. Using that same hybrid metric from the last episode, his impact looks great, but it's short of the all-timers. Keep in mind, though, his 1993 numbers were likely even better, and he seems to improve in the playoffs. The box score numbers we do have for those postseasons view him as around a top 15 peak, and that's with limited information to capture his defensive worth. Given how much of Houston's success was driven by a strong defense, I think it's much of Olajuwon's impact was defensively driven, which is hard for the box score to capture. In a sense, Hakeem's isolation scoring and monster defense were functionally closer to a young Wilt Chamberlain. Players who
elite isolation scorer.
Talent, but who might not help good
Got him, coach.
Hakeem's three-point shooting offenses did generate better results from those early Wilt teams, but I have some doubts about how he'd scale up next to another high-end talent, given his passing limitations and shot selection. On the other hand, he did have the tools to add off-ball value as a rebounder and pick-and-roll partner, while providing an inside-out option for any offense. And his prodigious defensive timing, mobility, and aggressiveness made him arguably the best defensive player of the three-point era, and, at his apex, one of the very best big men of all time. For more historical era...
Ooh, okay, GOAT level, elite isolation score. Yes, difficult shot making is inelastic. Don't really know what he means. That probably means you can score on anybody. Subpar shot selection. I wouldn't say so. Vision, probably average vision. I wouldn't say it's subpar. Solid basic playmaking, yes. Subpar shot selection, no. Excellent offensive rebounding and good pick and roll pop skills. GOAT level rim, incredible timing, yes. Quick responses to threat in paint, will extend perimeter, yes. One of the things that if you put an elite kind of big scorer like this in a pick and roll, good Lord, with his feet, he'll be able to move around so easily with pivots. If you put him with a Steve Nash or a kind of a LeBron type, dude, he's going to score so easily. Just look at how Joker does it with basically any guard. He makes any guard look like a great pick and roll player. But if you put this dude with Chris Paul, Hakeem, and Chris Paul, it'd be over. The shots would be so easy for him. Hakeem, now that I think about it, is definitely the GOAT center. Athletically was there, brains was there, scoring ability, one-on-one footwork was there. He could shoot. Wilt, Shaq, definitely better than David Robinson. Shaq was more dominant. Oh, we'll see as more and more of these episodes come out, man. You forget how good some of these guys are and what a different game it was. 8 3-pointers per game. That is crazy. That is crazy. That's what they do in one quarter now. All right, guys, that's it for this episode 8, Thinking Basketball, Hakeem Olajuwon. Let me know what you guys think, man. The game is completely different, so it's amazing to see how they won and how the offense and defense and players have evolved with the times. All right, guys, until next time, take 14 minutes, 24 seconds, or 1% of your day to get better. If you haven't, please check out the other videos. I've done 1 through 8 already, and I think my favorite one so far has been Hakeem, Larry Bird, and yeah. All right, guys, peace.